You could be all tough guy all you want, but when you're in that moment facing your fears, it's a whole different story. You understand? You could talk all the tough talk you want to talk, but when you're there facing it, it is completely different. And this is not like, standing in front of a tiger or something like that. That's a different type of fear. This is a fear of something that is literally outside of our reality, like outside of our understanding of reality. At least with a tiger, you know what a tiger is, and you know what it's about to do to you. Just imagine if, let's just say, the stories of mantids are real. How would you think about taking one 6-foot mantid being that looks and resembles like a praying mantis and just drop them down in the middle of New York City?
So super looking forward to this. Everybody knows my passion for UFOs and USOs and unidentified objects that hopefully we can identify. We have Andy Marcial with us, and we're going to talk about the latest documentary, hot off the press, Transmedium, Puerto Rico UFOs. Now, it's always good to be prepared, not scared. Look at today's opportunities, very abundant. Some people hide in the corner and complain. Other people just get out and do something about it. What are you doing about it? Are you prepared, not scared? There's a lot of options, folks, and one thing you really want to look into, if you got a 401 or an IRA, is precious metals. Noble Gold Investments will help you convert your 401 or IRA into precious metals, and they'll even gift you, if you qualify, 10 ounces of solid silver. You choose a 10-ounce U.S. American flag solid silver bar, or you could go with 10 Trump rounds, solid silver, your choice, limited edition, 1-877-646-5347. They have an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau, tons of 5-star reviews. I personally trust Colin Plume and Noble Gold Investments. I've been working with them for years. I have friends and family that have converted their 401s through Noble Gold Investments. Give them a call. You'll thank me later. So let's get into this. Andy, I want to believe, man, but you know what? I've had so many people send me photos and video. They're like, look, man, it's a UFO. It's going right behind this helicopter. And then we look at it again. It's like, oh, it's a bug. Went by really fast. We slowed it down. It looked cool. But this is a little bit different, man. So super looking forward to this. Tell us a little bit about you and how you got this opportunity to actually go out there on scene with Darcy. So very cool.
I appreciate you having me on. I actually met Darcy from my last documentary because he reached out to me and asked if I wanted to be a part of it. I'm not sure if you remember, I was the one that released those DHS videos that the CBP officially released on their website. I believe it was last year.
That was you.
Yeah, the rubber duck and the A-10 and La Bruja, and also it wasn't part of DHS, but it was the Army National Guard Apache footage. I had the source leak them to me. Yeah.
So tell us about that.
Well, I literally just got a message out of nowhere on my Instagram one day, and it was an individual who had a cell phone recording of his work computer, and he was like, "Oh, I think I have something I think you'll find interesting." So he sends over this recording, and I'm looking at it, and instantly I knew what I was looking at. Like, I'm not super, like familiar and technical when it comes to FLIR, but I understand what I'm looking at when I see, that kind of setup and all that. So it piqued my interest, and I started asking questions, and he started telling me who he was. He felt really like open. He felt like he could share everything with me. I mean, the guy literally gave me everything I asked him for when I was vetting him. Even his birth certificate, everything, social security number, you name it, he shared it with me just to prove that, he was who he was. So I was like, okay. So once he started, telling me what else he had, I was like even more intrigued. And he's like, well, these videos have just been sitting in a folder here in my office, because no one can identify them. And the way he told me is that these sightings, they really don't have any kind of nexus to drug smuggling, so the Department of Homeland Security really pays no mind to them. Yeah, so they were literally just sitting there, and he was very hesitant at first, but I convinced him to get me the originals, and he did, and that's when I realized, holy crap, I'm sitting on something pretty significant, and went ahead and reached out to the SCU for the rubber duck, had them do a proper analysis before it was released. But as exciting as it was to get the videos, I went through a lot of hell and a lot of heartache because you know how this community can be.
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, that's awesome. Why did he pick you? Did he say?
Yeah, he picked me because he said I didn't take any bullshit from anybody, and he liked the way I presented the evidence, and I was, you know, very like thorough with investigating, and I didn't just jump to conclusion, and I would also debunk, because I'm not trying to be a sensationalist when it comes to the subject. I come from the background of being around this for since I was little. Actually, my very first sighting or experience was in Puerto Rico when I lived down there. So this is a lot more personal to me than just a subject that I'm into. This has actually been around me my entire life.
Okay, and when you said he sent it to you via Instagram.
It was a cell phone recording first through Instagram, but then the originals we linked up, and he was able to get to me through other means. Where that's how I got the original like
So,
quality.
so for people that haven't followed your work before, somebody that might be new to this, on Instagram, and like he goes to your Instagram page, and like you've done this before, you've been a part of other films before, and tell us a little bit about your background, if you would please.
Well, like I said, this mainly I started my Instagram only for one reason. It was just to kind of reach out to people who have had close encounters or close experiences.
Okay.
Because not just what happened to me in Puerto Rico, but I had a very significant experience here in Long Island in 1992, and that one was probably the one that really changed my worldview. Like it completely turned everything upside down.
What happened?
And well, I was outside, and it was summertime, and me and my best friend, but we used to always call each other cousins. We're playing in the pool, and it was mid afternoon, clear skies, and I got this urge or like a sense to look up, like something told me to look up. And when I look up over my house, I caught something in my peripheral, and I kind of did a double take. So I looked up, I saw it, and then I looked back up again, and I was like, "Holy shit!" Like it was a disc. It was a saucer sitting right over my house and it wasn't like, really far away. It was really close. Like it was about 150 feet to 200 feet away, and about 65. I would estimate maybe 65 feet in diameter. And there was no lights. It resembles the saucer right above you, but without all the seams. It was just smooth. And literally at that similar angle, the only difference is that I wasn't able to see the top. I only saw from the edge a little bit of the top, and then all the rest of the bottom. But it was just smooth. It was just like one single piece. And actually, it was the exact same color and almost texture as the one above you. And I looked at it, and I looked at I turned to my left, and I'm looking at my best friend, and he's staring at it too. So that's when I realized, okay, so I'm not going crazy. This is really there. And then after about a few seconds of staring at this thing, because we're both just like fixated on this, like just your mind is like unable to uh, compute what's happening, because this is, we're raised with the understanding that these things are not real. That's impossible. That we're alone, and there it is. Your mind is trying to make sense of what it's registering because of that information that you're fed. So as we're looking at it, it begins to move to the left. But I would say the weirdest part about it was the actual movement, because it. I don't know if you ever played air hockey, and you know how the puck
Oh yeah.
just float. Yeah,
Yeah.
how the puck just floats in the air when you give it a little tap, it
Mhm.
just moves and glides. That's literally how it moved. So that was probably, as weird as it is, that was the weirdest part, because that was such an odd thing to see, of how this thing was absolutely still. It wasn't moving, and then all of a sudden just went boop, and just started moving like that. You know, it's really weird. No sound. Again, no lights. It was just the actual physical craft. And then at one point, as it was moving to the left, which is east, it caught the glint of the sun. So you were able to see that that's more data that your brain is registering and is telling you, okay, this is real. And then it just slowly hovered at the same speed. I mean, from the distance that we were at, I would estimate this thing was maybe moving at like 15, 20 miles per hour at most. And it just kept and continued hovering that exact same speed until it went over the tree line and we lost it. But the interesting thing about that is that not until this is around when I was about 15, I would say, I think, or 14, no, 13, about 13 years old, I would say. And it wasn't until about maybe 5 years ago, 5 or 6 years ago, when I started this account, that I started telling people my story after getting upset at, the garbage that I was seeing being posted out there. And one day I get somebody that sends me a message, and they're like, "Hey, I just heard your story, and I think I saw the exact same craft that you saw with me and my family in 1992." And I was like, "Really?" And then he tells me, "Yeah, I live in Brookhaven, and the direction that this craft was traveling is the direction of Brookhaven. It's further out east, but it was still in that direction." So he tells me, "Yeah, I saw it around the same time, and it was a clear afternoon, and me and my family were out in the front, and we saw this craft coming in from the distance." And he described it looking the exact same way that I described it. And my hair stood up, because I was 13, and I'm 40. I'm 42 now. I only started this page about 5 or 6 years ago. So to get that kind of validation that someone else on the same island around the same time saw the exact same thing was pretty incredible. And then to make it even crazier, he tells me, "Have you ever heard of the Brookhaven lab incident?" And I was like, "Yeah." And apparently, Brookhaven had its own Roswell. And yeah, out east in Brookhaven, New York, a craft had crashed, and supposedly it was witnesses described it as a UFO, and I think it was like a cylindrical one, but I know that they supposedly shut down the location around that area for like 3 days. Only the Brookhaven lab employees, or if I'm not mistaken, were allowed in there. And I think during someone's deathbed confession from one of the an individual who worked at the facility at the time, had told his family that there was a craft that was recovered, and apparently some bodies were also recovered and brought to the labs. So yeah, so I'm not sure. I always say 92 or 93, because when he mentioned to me about the Brookhaven lab incident, that happened from if I'm not mistaken in 92. So I'm not sure if what I saw was the craft that was involved, or if it was something that came after the craft, maybe investigating, like, you know, looking out for their buddies or something to see if there's anybody alive. But I know that it was definitely somehow connected to that incident.
Very interesting. Now, have you thought that the craft itself could be an experimental military craft?
No, actually,
Okay.
I got even more confirmation a year after that. It's so crazy. I was like, my mind was just getting blown left and right. I was like, "Are you kidding me?" So I got in touch with someone who was retired CIA, and was able to have about a 3 to 4 hour conversation with this individual. And I told him my story, but I never told him about that, all that extra information with the guy in Brookhaven. And he brought it up himself after hearing it. He goes, "What year did you say this happened?" I said around 92 or 93. And then he tells me, he was like, "Have you ever heard of the Brookhaven lab incident?" And I start laughing. I'm like, "Yeah, I just found out about it last year." So he tells me, he was like, "Well, it was real. And we investigated it, and we instructed the facility to install security cameras pointing upwards towards the sky, because apparently they were getting visits by a craft that was seen, and I also got confirmation that at that time they were doing they had a nuclear reactor, so they were doing experiments with nuclear energy there too. So we know how they're attracted to all that.
Yeah, yeah, I'm looking it up. So South Haven County Park, November 24th, 1992, UFO crash incident. Video footage allegedly shows a large fire of some unknown object, mylar blankets seen being issued between personnel, used for covering up, as it's referred to now, unalived alien bodies, allegedly. Fire trucks on site, 2-day recovery of unknown objects over a 2-day period. And this is from 92. That's so if this is in November, and you said when you saw it, it was during the spring or the summer?
It was during the summer.
Wow.
Yeah, pretty crazy. So that's why I'm believing either I saw the exact craft that was involved, or something that came after the incident. Because I'm not sure if you know the Virginia incident in Brazil.
Vaguely. That was
Well,
one of the. Tell us a little bit about it. I'm pretty sure I do, but I'd like to hear what you know about it.
I think it was in the 80s. I forget exactly what year, but it was the one in Virginia, Brazil, where the UFO crashed and there was bodies and aliens running around
Yeah, that's
everywhere. And
right.
then
One was running around downtown or something like.
yeah,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
three little
Okay.
girls. Yeah, that's all.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So after in James Fox's recent documentary on that, there was a doctor that he found that came forward for the first time, and he mentioned that after the crash, he had seen another craft that was doing like a grid search pattern, almost as if it was looking for something. So that's why I'm saying that if it's not the same craft that was involved in the incident, it could have been a scenario like that where something else came looking for survivors or something of the sort.
So how far were you from Brookhaven then at that time?
I'm like a 15-20 minute drive from Brookhaven.
So less than 15 miles,
Um,
approximately.
so, yeah, approximately. I would
That's
think,
pretty
yeah,
close.
something like
I mean, that's pretty
it.
dang
Yeah,
close.
it's not that far.
And there's all sorts of weird stuff that goes around these plants sometimes. And so thank you so much for sharing your testimony, man. I think that's awesome. I love that. That's really cool. And I can tell you're genuine about it. And when you talk to a genuine experiencer like that, like yourself, I've had my own experiences of strange things that I don't know what they were. Can't say they're aliens, but they definitely weren't humans. So, it's pretty cool. And to be around that time. But do you have any like lost time or anything that weird? Do you think they might have done anything, or just kind of checked you out and took off?
No, something else happened after that. Not long after, maybe like I would say maybe a few weeks after, I had an incident in my room, um, where something woke me up in the middle of the night, and I thought it was my little sister, or somebody walking around on the upstairs. And you ever lay down where you just, like you're awake, but you don't open your eyes, you're just conscious, like listening. So I was just listening because I heard or felt something at the foot of my bed, and I just laid there, just paying attention to see if it was just my imagination about to go, slip back into sleep. And I felt a push, like an imprint, pushed down on the foot of my bed on my left side by my foot. So it kind of like, startled me. And then I'm like, all right, maybe it's just my imagination. So my eyes are closed and I just laid there waiting. And like a minute or two passes, and I feel another one on the other side of my foot, like something pushing down on the bed. So now I know that something's really there, something's happening, and my heart starts racing. So I'm laying there again. My eyes are closed the entire time. I was a real chick back in the day, so I was always afraid of the dark. So as soon as I felt this, all the scary things that I ever freaking watched on TV started rolling through my head. And then as I'm laying there, I felt the first one lift up and it moves to my waist. So every time I feel this thing move, again, that's more information your brain is registering, and you know that something's happening, but you don't know what it is or who it is or or what anything like that. So your brain is filling in the gaps with all these scary things. And then the same thing happens with my other side and moves to my waist. So now I feel it both pushing down on the side of my waist. And then I feel another one by my foot and another one by my other foot. So now there's four. So in my mind, I was getting the impression like there was somebody over me, right? So then the two impressions by my waist moved up to the side of my shoulder, and the two by my feet moved up to my waist, like one at a time, like that. So every single time this thing would move, whatever it was, my heart would just like, I mean, it was just, it was racing. I was absolutely terrified. And I did not want to open my eyes. I didn't want to move a muscle. I literally, at one point, I tried to move my pinky and I couldn't, like from the fear. I felt like if I did anything, whatever it was going to attack me or do something to me. So as I'm laying there, I then can feel my breath hitting off of something. Like if you close your eyes and put your hand to your face, you don't have to touch yourself to feel that it's right in front of you. So I felt that right in front of my face, almost like if somebody was just right there staring at me. And I can hear my breath and feel my breath. And then I stopped breathing. I feel like I was choking, but it was more like felt like I was drowning, because it wasn't like I didn't feel anything in the exterior, but something was blocking my airway in the inside. And I was gasping for air and I couldn't breathe. And I was like, really choking. And in my mind, I just said, you know what? Screw it. If I'm going to die, I might as well see what's about to do it. And at the time, I used to be pretty religious. So I was like praying or whatever. And I was like, oh, God, help me. And I sat up off my, on the bed, and I just took a deep breath. Like I just got out the water and I was by myself in my room. But the weird thing is that later on in life, after researching and stuff, I came across a lot of stories that were identical to that. I actually met somebody halfway across the world that when they told me their story, my hair stood up because it was almost identical. So, for people to say, oh, yeah, it's sleep paralysis. But the thing is how can so many people have the exact same experience during a sleep paralysis episode? Like, to me, that's just unheard of. I mean, it's too crazy to think that or to believe that. And not only that, but some of the experiences that other people had, their eyes were open and they saw something. They saw the being or whatever, the alien and whatnot. So I've never gone to like any kind of hypnosis or anything like that, but I have a feeling that night I may not have even been in my room. And when I woke up, I was in my room.
So a good friend of mine is probably one of the best hypnotherapists like on the planet, and he's like a master at conversational hypnosis too. And I've talked to him before because I have some friends that don't want to share their experiences publicly yet. Some of them are similar to what you just described. One of them has had a high position with defense contractors, so He hasn't really been able to talk much about it. But the reason I bring it up is I was going to introduce him to my friend Kevin, that does the hypnosis stuff. And he said, "Yeah, give me a day and I'll find out what it was." And I've wanted this, like even figure out if maybe I was just hallucinating when I was a toddler or something that I saw that was really interesting. But that's a whole other podcast. But regardless, man, that is far out. And thank you so much for sharing that, because I know that's got to be kind of it's probably building up some emotions in you right now. It got to be a little emotional when you rethink about it.
Yeah, it does, but I look at it more like it's. I used to be afraid of it, but I realized if it was something bad, it would have hurt me, and it didn't.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I realized that's how little by little, as I got older, I started to understand, or at least get some kind of understanding that this isn't really something negative. It's just people's interpretations of what they experience. They perceive it as that. And
Cool.
some people, especially if they're religious, they look at it like, oh, it's evil, and then they stick to that. And that's where this whole narrative of bad aliens comes into play. But I don't think that they're inherently evil or anything like that. I just think that because humanity is so proud of themselves and they don't think anything can do anything to them, that, for them to experience something like that, they look at it as like, oh my God, it's got to be evil because nothing can do that to us. We're humans. But we do it every day to animals, and we don't bat an eye. So it's more about the pride thing with humans than anything.
Great points. Absolutely. I hear you. Now, I want to talk about this footage that you were. So, tell us about the gentleman that sends you this footage a little bit more, and like how you vetted him, like because it was really important for you to get to the truth, obviously, and I appreciate that. Checks in the mail, by the way. I applaud you for getting this out there. But tell us a little bit about that, because that's a pretty big deal. That's pretty cool.
Well, yeah, like I said, I asked him for everything he could possibly provide me to prove who he was, and he did. Like Social Security, birth certificate, all the information and IDs and everything that he had from his time in Department of Homeland Security and all that, and Border Patrol, and also the Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies vetted him as well, and were satisfied. So yeah, he was.
And so where do we see this footage?
I have that on my YouTube channel.
Okay.
It's the only videos I have on my YouTube channel.
What's your YouTube channel, please?
It's NY UAP discussion.
I want to show this off. It didn't pull up that way. NYUAP discussion. No. Oh, it's showing UAD. Okay.
But it's cool. What is cool about this whole Department of Homeland Security thing is that, when me and Darcy went to Puerto Rico, we linked up with the guy who released, at least in my opinion, is the most important and most credible UFO video ever released, and that's the Aguadilla 2013 footage. And I knew of a source that I shared with Darcy. Darcy got in touch with this individual, and we ended up finding out that he knew the exact person who leaked that footage. And next thing you know, we're on a plane going to Puerto Rico.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So you go to Puerto Rico. Now let's get into this. So you can actually get the documentary now on Apple TV. Is it available on Amazon as well, I would assume?
Not yet. He's going through a few hurdles with Amazon for some reason, and it's odd because it's the first. He's done multiple documentaries, and for some reason, this one they're um they're making it they're making it, excuse me, a little more difficult for him to get it on there. But right
Okay.
now, it's on Apple and I think Voodoo or something like that.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Yeah. Let me show it off here also real quick, because pretty easy to get there. So just tv.apple.com. You can watch it on Apple TV. Here's the trailer. The trailer is great. And then here's some other documentaries that Darcy's put together also. I, I mean, I just want to hear about what you guys, what happened when you get out there. Tell us about that experience. So this is
Well, it's
off the press.
I actually I got Darcy motivated to do the Puerto Rico thing after the first time we met during the first documentary, and we were talking after after he'd interviewed and recorded and all that, and I started telling him, I was like, there's a lot that goes on in Puerto Rico, and not a lot of people really talk about it like that. You get little docs here and there, not real docs that focus on it, but little clips, for example, like History Channel talks about Puerto Rico. I'm like, but there's so much that goes on out there. It's crazy. And we got to talking about that. And then I told him about, the individual I knew, which is Jorge Martin. He's like, I consider him Puerto Rico's George Knapp because he's literally just like him in the sense that this is what he investigates and what's his focus on in the Puerto Rico. And the guy is a wealth of knowledge. He's been doing it since I think it's like the 70s or something like that. And that's how we got most of that's how we found most of the individuals that we met out there.
Okay. And then there was this encounter on a boat.
That was Andres Maldonado. That he had an encounter. He's actually one of the individuals in the documentary that had a actual face-to-face encounter with a quote unquote alien that looked human. He explained how this individual had a sort of like Indian look to him, but of course he wasn't Indian, and had brown hair. And he claimed his name, the being identified himself as Amaron, Amaron, and he had a full yeah. But here's the interesting thing with this. There's another very famous
Aramon.
No, Amaron.
Well, no, but it sounds like Aramon.
It's not, well, yeah, it does.
A lot.
The letters are.
That would be spooky if that's who it was, man. Could you imagine?
Well, check this out though. In 1988, there's another very famous incident that happened in Puerto Rico with an individual named Amaury Rivera. And again, that's another one that I always push because I don't feel like it's gotten enough attention. It's the only incident that I've ever seen, aside from the Calvine incident. I believe it was Scotland. I think that occurred with that photo. But that photo was never released. All you had was like a black and white recreation, right, of the jet and the military jet and that diamond-shaped craft. But the 1988 Amaury Rivera incident is much different. This man actually had multiple close-up shots of the craft that was involved in his abduction after he was dropped off in another part of the island. He happened to have a camera on in his, I believe it was in his car or on him, because I think him and the car were taken, and both him and the car were dropped off somewhere else. So he managed to grab his camera because he used to do, I think he did photography for clubs or something like that out there, and managed to take some photos. And it, again, the only photos that I've seen besides Colonel Wendell Stevens' collection that show the craft like up close with an F-6, I believe it's an F-16 or yeah, I think it's an F-16 fighter jet right by it, like buzzing it. And this guy took about 4 different pictures or 4 or 5 different pictures. And in each picture, he said it wasn't this. He said, I think he said there was 2 jets. So in one picture that he will capture, that's one jet. But then the second, as that jet passes, the other one's coming while the other one is making a turn, basically like a U-turn. So he has about 4 or 5 of some of the most compelling photographs of a genuine disc being buzzed by the United States Air Force. Which, how the hell did they know that craft was there? Like, what are the odds? That they just so happened to be flying, cruising in that area, and so happened to see the craft. Like that was pretty. I always found that interesting because it's similar with the Calvine. How did they know that Diamond's craft was there? So they have some means of either detecting them that we don't know about, or maybe it's possible that we are somehow, like I guess you could say, not working with them, but allowing them to do certain things.
Yeah, and another theory also is if they're, basically following these craft like that, would there be a possibility that there were, it's ours, it's an experimental craft, so they've got an F-16 around it to make sure that nothing serious happens. I mean, I don't know. I'm thinking of all of the possibilities, and it could be any of the possibilities. And it could also be if the thing enters the airspace, there's technology that our military has that can pick up on stuff like that, and we immediately send some, a fighter jet out there to see what's going on. And that's what I find very interesting. Now, there's also been reports of similar craft that you saw. There was almost identical report of that craft, or something almost identical looking, from shortly after Roswell, and it was, I think, in Arizona or something like that. So there's been reports all the way back late 40s of that exact type of craft.
Well, they're depicted in Renaissance paintings.
Yeah, touche. You're right. No, they are. You're absolutely right. Yeah. Wow. The Watchers, literally. So do you think that
I know.
when you go out to Puerto Rico and you like, tell us more about that? Are we any closer to data that we?
Well, there's definitely, in my opinion, I think it's by far one of the most active areas on the planet. I've never really heard of so much things happening in such a small area. So the fact that the locals there believe that something is around, in the water, some kind of base, is justified because it's so commonplace. They have so many sightings, so many things that they see in the sky that, anyone would believe that there's got to be something, that they're, some kind of facility on the bottom of the ocean that they're using as a base or a home, whatever, because of how many things that they see coming in and out of the waters or flying in the skies, especially in Aguadilla. And we were shown satellite imagery, or LiDAR, of the coast of Puerto Rico, of Aguadilla, and you can see on the seabed, not far off the coast, there's actually a structure sitting on the floor that's miles long, that's rectangular in shape, and it completely stands out like a sore thumb from the natural surroundings, the natural environment around it. It has very sharp edges, and it looks artificial. And also, I believe it's on the north side of the island, on the Puerto Rico Trench. There's we were shown LiDAR satellite imagery of, right at the bottom of the trench. And we know, I'm not sure if, for the viewers, Puerto Rico Trench is one of the deepest trenches on the planet. And all the way at the bottom is another even longer rectangular shape that's clearly seen in this radar LiDAR image, literally just sitting right directly at the bottom of of the the trench. And again, looks artificial, does not look anything like any of the surrounding environment. So it's, and then again, because they've seen so many things coming in and out, and not just UFOs. There's way more than just that going on in Puerto Rico. The individual that leaked the Aguadilla footage, when we met him, had told us that the beach in the footage, that the object goes into the water. So apparently that beach area was used by fishermen for a long time, and they basically abandoned that area because there were a lot of reports of fishermen seeing children running in the middle of the night on the shoreline. at the beach. But the thing is, that wouldn't be odd. It's Puerto Rico. There's always people at the beach. But the problem is that this beach in particular is very remote and out of the way. You have to really take a rocky dirt road to get to it. It's very difficult to get to. Um, and at the time of night that these children were being seen, it was just it was odd. But the thing is that they would see them coming. They would see them running on the beach, going into the water, but never coming back out. Yeah.
And how many people were reporting on this? Like,
All the fishermen did. They stopped using that area from what he told us because they were too afraid to fish in that area.
and when did they stop fishing out there?
He didn't tell me exactly when, but he showed us the exact location where me and Darcy are hopefully planning to go back and do some investigating of that area.
You think it could be just like an urban legend where they're just trying to freak people out so they don't go fishing out
No,
there? This is good.
no way. You hear? Okay, my father is not a believer. He's religious. He thinks that they're the devil, all this stuff, and he doesn't like talking about the subject. But one day, many years ago, he tells me this story, which I found kind of odd because at that time he didn't know I was really into the subject like that. And he basically what he tells me is we live in a small little barrio in Aguada, right next to Aguadillas. Like honestly, to me, it's the same exact thing because we're so close. Um, and there's a lot of it's a little fishing town. There's a lot of fishermen, and he used to own a panaderia. It was like a grocery store, I guess you could say. And one day he tells me that one of his friends walked into the grocery store and he looked like pale, like something was wrong. And he asked him, "Oh, is everything okay?" And he said he basically tells him that the night before, him and his son went night fishing. And I know the beach he's talking about because it's our like basically little beach. It's like the town's small little beach. And I grew up playing there for many years. So they would take these wooden like little lanchas, we call them. It's like a one engine little wooden boat. And they would go out and fish in the middle of the night. So he was out there with his son. It's just him and his son. And I don't know if you've ever been to the middle of the ocean, but at night it is black. You can't see. Like I mean, if the moon is not out, you're not seeing a damn thing but the stars or whatever torch you got on you or light on you. That's it. Like it is pitch black. You can't see the horizon. You can't see everything blends in. It's freaking terrifying. So they're out there fishing in that in the middle of the night, which I already give them props for that because I would never do that. And so here's the crazy thing is that he tells him while they're out there, him and his son, this is why I personally know these aren't just stories. These are real things that happen to real people all the time. So he's out there fishing. And he says what happened next basically scared the living. Underneath the boat, a light lit up right underneath his boat, a massive light. And he said that the light then moved to the side of their boat and exited the water and hovered over them, and it was above them. And to feel the water and everything. He said it was fairly big. I don't know exactly how the size, but he said it was huge, and it was just a bright light, like a disc shaped light, I believe. And that they were so terrified they just turned that boat on and hauled their ass back to shore. And that was literally right off the coast of our beach, which is not even 10 minutes, not even a good 5 full minutes from where we live. So, and of course,
did he tell you when that was approximately?
I think that incident happened sometime in maybe early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s, I believe.
Okay, so
Yeah,
it was after the time you saw that craft in New York.
Yeah, I was already. Yeah. It was past that. Yeah, I
Okay.
found that's when he told me about it. But yeah, this is like like I said, and it's interesting because that's also the same area where in well, you had the Aguadilla incident, which is not exactly those waters, but it's in that general area. You understand? Um, but you also had those videos that came out from Crash Boat Beach. I believe it was last year, of that blue light under the water where you could see something kind of like moving by it that didn't look, at least to me, it did not resemble anything human-like. Because if it was some kind of a scuba diver, you would have clearly seen the outline of the person moving in the water. That's a given. Not only that, but you would have seen the bubbles of their breathing equipment. You would have seen some kind of indication that it was a human, but they were never able to identify what that was. It's not the first time they've seen that because, again, like I just told you, my father's friend had a very similar incident with a light right underneath his craft in that same area. Craft have been seen coming in and out of that section, and in 2021, I believe it was in I think it was in January or February of 2021. I was online on YouTube just looking up videos from Puerto Rico to see if I could find anything new. And somebody in custom, I think it was Border Patrol. Homeland Security captured just the same way that the agent sent it to me on the cell phone recording. This individual was clearly, working the same department out there, filmed his computer, and on FLIR again, they caught something exiting the waters in Aguadilla. There was a disc-like object that was captured on FLIR, and the guy is showing his camera, his computer screen on the camera and explaining what happened. And as he's explaining it, the point of the video starts off where the object is actually just leaving the water and it's hovering and going upwards towards the sky. And this was again in Aguadilla. So something is 1,000% happening in those waters. Like there's no questions about it that this has to be something down there because there's just so much activity. Even the military is. I think Lou Elizondo talked about that incident off of Puerto Rico where that torpedo was sucked down by something that came out of the water. That came from underneath the ocean. And they were retrieving I believe it was a warhead. And as they were raising it, I believe, I don't know if it was a helicopter or they noticed this this shadow, this something was rising upwards from beneath, and it was huge. And then before they were able to get the warhead out, this thing just went and sucked the warhead up, and then just went back down into the ocean. That was off the coast of Puerto Rico. And then also in the 70s, I think it was in the 70s, the United States Navy was holding like drills, like war games, almost in a sense, off about 100. I think it was about 100 miles off the coast of Puerto Rico. And during those drills, they actually detected an object that was a legitimate detection of something massive underneath the ocean that was moving. They couldn't identify what it was. They had no idea what it could be, but it followed. Basically, they tracked it for, I think it was, if I'm not mistaken, like 3 or 4 days before, it was like basically following them underneath the waters, and then whoop, gone, just disappeared. After like 3 or 4 days of tracking it, it just vanished. So yeah, there's a lot, and that's just the oceans around the island. That's not including the bodies of water in the island. There's a location called La Laguna Cartagena. That's a very, very high location of very high activity. Many people have seen craft entering and exiting that lagoon. supposedly there's like caverns under there that lead out to the ocean. So they believe that, whatever's in the ocean is using these as basically like roadways in a sense to traverse the island, because almost all large bodies of water out there have had some kind of sightings. Even another very famous part of Puerto Rico is the national forest, the Junque National Forest. That's another one that's, I mean, steeped in mystery when it comes to the subject. There's been incidents where the military has shut down certain locations in certain areas after sightings and things have been seen. I think if I'm not mistaken, something had been recovered at one point there, and even NASA was involved. We found out that NASA had flown to Puerto Rico during this time. I think it was sometime during the 90s, I think. And the NASA, it was a NASA plane that was filled with all sensors, and for like I think from what I was told, it was like 2 or 3 days. NASA was actually flying circles around El Junque National Forest for hours, and they would land back down, refuel, do whatever, and then go back up again and just circle and circle with all the instrumentation they had. So that's interesting too. But yeah, a lot, and that's not including the other side of the island. Um, that's also had a lot of interesting things happen. So it's everywhere. Trust me. And you got the Chupacabras that happened in Puerto Rico. That was the very first sighting of them. Then you have this new being that people have been claiming to see called La Gargola. It's some winged creature supposedly that now they've been spotting in Puerto Rico. And there's a lot of activity on that little small island down there. It's insane.
Man, I want to go. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
Like,
And
sign me
and
up,
I didn't
man.
wait. I didn't tell you that again. That was when I was young, living in Puerto Rico. That my first experience was there when I was. I think it was about like 8 or 9. I think, where I was outside of my